In 2022, a newlywed couple vanished from a secluded Montana cabin. No screams. No bodies. No clues. Just an unlocked door and the faint scent of bleach where their bed had been. 1 year later, the bride's sister checked into the same cabin. Under a fake name with a gun in her bag. And questions the police never answered. What she uncovered beneath the floorboards exposed a decade of silence, and a predator hiding in plain sight. This isn't just a mystery. It's a reckoning. This is the Witness Cabin. Before we begin, hit that subscribe button because some stories don't end where they're supposed to, and this one isn't over yet. June 18, 2022, Moss Hollow, Montana. Harper Walker laughed as the tires crunched up the gravel road, her bare feet propped on the dash, one hand tangled in her husband's. The woods around them were thick, silent, and endless, like something out of a postcard no one had sent in years. The cabin appeared through the trees, small and picturesque, weathered logs, green tin roof, wraparound porch, exactly like the photos. Ryan parked the Jeep and cut the engine. This is it. Harper leaned out the window, the forest smell hitting her all at once, pine, cold dirt, and something older. It's isolated. Ryan grinned and tapped his phone. No bars, that's the point. They unpacked, slowly dragging duffels and wine bottles through the front door. Inside was clean to the point of sterile, polished floors, crisp white sheets. A kitchen that looked like it had never been used. Harper wrinkled her nose. Smells like bleach. Ryan kissed her forehead. We'll make it home. That night they opened a bottle of wine and curled up by the fire. Harper played a song on her phone from their wedding playlist. 1 bar of signal was enough. They danced barefoot on the wood floor, laughing quietly like the whole world had shrunk to just them. But later the fire popped too loudly and the wind stopped completely. Then came the knock. 3 slow, deliberate raps on the cabin door. Harper froze. Did you hear? Ryan stood cautious, stepping toward the entrance. He opened the door a crack. Nothing, no one. Just forest, just dark. They locked the door and went to bed. By morning the Jeep was still in the driveway, but Harper and Ryan were gone, and the cabin smelled even stronger, like bleach and something else. Something wrong. The cabin looked like something out of a rustic magazine. Weathered wood, wide front porch, trees hugging its perimeter like old friends. Ryan Walker stepped out of the rented Jeep and stretched his camera already around his neck. Harper leaned out the passenger side, squinting at the "Welcome to Moss Hollow" sign nailed to the porch rail. This is it? She asked, biting back disappointment. The online pictures had made it seem bigger. Could be charming once we're inside, Ryan offered, and we're here. No signal, no emails, no calls, just us. Harper forced a smile, brushing her strawberry blonde hair from her eyes. Just us, she repeated. The air was thin and quiet, too quiet. Even the trees didn't rustle. They carried their bags up the porch stairs. The key was under the mat, just like the booking app had promised. Ryan opened the door. Inside, rustic meets clinical, a log cabin-styled space with polished floors, gleaming kitchen surfaces, and beds so neatly made it looked like no one had ever touched them. Smells like bleach, Harper muttered. Nose wrinkling. Means clean, Ryan said, but his voice had dimmed too. She walked toward the bedroom. Wow, this mattress feels like cardboard. She pressed a hand against the bed's stiff corner. Still want to have honeymoon sex on this thing? Ryan leaned in behind her, wrapped his arms around her waist. We'll manage. That night wind howled outside. Ryan built a small fire in the hearth. They shared wine, kissed, laughed. Harper finally began to relax until a noise broke the calm. Knock, knock, knock. 3 steady reps on the front door. Ryan froze. Harper stared at him. No one's supposed to be out here. Ryan got up, heart already pounding, and peeked through the peephole. No one. He opened the door, cracked. Nothing but the dark forest animals, maybe, he said, trying to mask the unease. They bolted the door and went to bed. Hours later, Harper woke to a scraping sound, a dragging. Her breath caught in her throat. She shook Ryan awake. Something's out there. Ryan listened. A long silence, then again that soft dragging. He grabbed the fireplace poker and crept toward the door. He never made it there. The door exploded inward with a splintering crunch. A man in overalls and boots stepped through, eyes dark as coal, face covered with a hunter's mask, antler grotesque behind him. The wind died. Harper screamed. 4 days later, Sheriff Nick Holbrook crouched beside the front porch of Moss Hollow cabin, cigarette tucked behind his ear. You're saying no one's been here? Don Blandon, the owner, folded his arms. No one. I was up at my deer stand 3 days ago, came down to check the property today, and the door was open. That ain't normal. The sheriff squinted toward the cabin. No signs of forced entry. The place was eerily clean. No blood, no scuff marks, not even dust inside the bedroom. 2 pillows, 1 rumpled, 1 flat. No toothbrushes, no luggage, but also no car. Rental agency says the Walkers picked up a Jeep Grand Cherokee and Bozeman never returned at Holbrook scratched his chin. Strange Don stood stiff watching. Maybe they got spooked and ran. City folk don't always last out here. Holbrook turned slowly. And you're sure you didn't see anyone here? Anything I told you, Don said, voice flat. I don't come around unless I need to. Ain't my business what guests do. The sheriff noticed a smear just barely visible on the bedroom wall. He ran a gloved finger over it. It flaked like paint. He sniffed at something. Iron, he said. Nothing. The Montana wind was a cruel, dry, biting, indifferent. Evelyn Cross drove through it like a woman possessed, her fingers gripping the steering wheel so hard her knuckles had turned bone white. The road to Moss Hollow was just as she remembered from the police report, long, cracked, and surrounded by miles of lonely pine, the kind of place where no one could hear you scream. In the passenger seat, a half-empty bottle of vodka rattled against her duffel bag. She hadn't taken a sip, not yet, but the option comforted her more than the loaded .38 tucked into the glove box. She glanced down at the fake reservation confirmation on her phone. Rachel Green, travel blogger, 2 nights at Moss Hollow cabin. The name was the job was Evelyn was no influencer. She was a burned-out former trauma nurse with insomnia, trust issues, and a crushing case of survivor's guilt. Harper, her baby sister, had vanished a year ago along with that golden boy husband of hers, Ryan. No ransom note, no footage beyond the initial cabin arrival, no bodies, just an eerie disappearance and a property owner whose expression never changed during interviews. Evelyn didn't believe in ghosts, she believed in men with knives and smiles. And Don Blandon had both. The cabin appeared around the bend like a bruise. Familiar, dull, and aching. She parked the truck, scanned the tree, and then exhaled. Slowly, the place looked unchanged, still, too perfect, too scrubbed-like. Someone cleaned it, not because it was dirty but because it had been inside. The smell of lemon and ammonia hit like a punch. Christ, she muttered, still smells like a goddamn hospital. Evelyn dropped her bags and swept the space with a practiced eye. 1 bedroom, 1 bathwood, burning fireplace, solid oak floors, nothing out of place except the fact that everything was in place. Even the magazines on the coffee table were fanned like a model home. She opened the bedroom closet, empty, no hangers. That was odd. She turned on her voice recorder and whispered, Day 1 visual inspection underway. Floorboards have scuff marks. Near the fireplace could be nothing. A creak from the porch stopped her mid-sentence. She waited, still as a grave. A shadow passed the window, then a knock, 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 just like the report said. Her blood ran cold. She walked to the door, not bothering to look through the peephole. She opened it. There stood Don Blandon, tall, lean, and sunburned like a scarecrow that had grown a beard. Well, hey there, he said, voice soaked in fake hospitality. Didn't expect nobody for a few more hours. I got in early, Evelyn said, smiling like a wolf. The roads were clear. He nodded slowly. I'm Don. This your first time out here? She shook his hand with enough force to make him wheeze. Yeah, cabin looked too pretty to pass up. Well, hope it meets expectations. Let me know if you need anything. I live about 2 me up the ridge, but cell service is __, so don't be shy about walking over. I'll keep that in mind, she said, already closing the door. Right, he muttered. Well, enjoy the peace. The latch clicked shut. She locked it, deadbolt, then the chain. Then she pulled her pistol from the glove box and placed it beside the bed. That night the quiet was loud. No music. No phone signal, just Evelyn, her recorder, and the ghost she'd come to chase. She sat by the fire with her journal open, writing slowly, You were my sister, my blood. We fought like hell, but I never stopped loving you. I let you go to that cabin. I laughed at you for booking an Airbnb that looked like a horror movie set. I was supposed to protect you, Harper. I didn't. I won't fail you again. A rustle outside. She stood quietly, walked to the window, and peeked through the curtain. Nothing but trees, but in her gut something curled and waited. Not a ghost, something worse, a man still breathing. Morning brought no peace. Evelyn awoke in a sweat, gripped by a dream of Harper's voice calling from under the floorboard. She shook it off, dressed quickly, and started her inspection in earnest. The cabin was sterile, too sterile. She began with the fireplace. Her flashlight scanned along the hearth's edge, revealing tiny blackened streaks in the grout. Burnt hair, fabric, hard to tell, but something had been scorched there. Not decorative, not clean. She moved on to the bed frame and got on her knees. That's when she saw it, a cluster of thin gouges in the wood beneath the bed. Not random scratches, but 4 parallel marks. Tightly spaced fingernails. Someone had clawed at the frame. She whispered into her recorder, 4 scratch marks, like someone was being dragged or held. Approximate location, left side of the bed. Could be defensive action during a struggle. Her hand trembled slightly as she touched the grooves. Wood splinters bit her fingertips. The marks were deep. The bleach smell suddenly made more sense. By noon, Evelyn was outside, pacing the perimeter. The cabin sat like a monument to isolation. Pines formed a natural curtain, swallowing sound and memory. There were no security cameras. The nearest neighbor was a 40-minute hike behind the cabin. The earth sloped down to a rocky drainage area. She stopped when her boot sank into soft dirt. That's odd, she thought. The soil was looser here, disturbed as if something had recently been buried and unburied. She pulled out her knife and Started digging. Only a few inches down she found a small silver button. Elegant. Feminine. She recognized it immediately. It was from Harper's favorite denim jacket. Her breath caught in her throat. Still crouched, she forced her shaking hands to photograph it, bag it in a plastic sandwich bag from her coat pocket, and marked the spot that evening. The tension strangled the cabin like a noose. Evelyn couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. She poured a single shot of vodka and set it beside her, not to drink, just to look at. A dare to herself. She sat by the fire, gun across her lap as the night settled in like a heavy wet cloth. Then it came again, a sound on the porch crack. She stood, moved silently to the front window, peeled back the edge of the curtain. Nothing. She turned toward the back door. A figure ran past, a blur. She raised the gun, flipped the back lock, and eased open the door. Nothing but trees, stillness, shadows. She scanned the tree in her breath, fogging in the cold air, and then a whisper just behind her ear. Evie. She spun, gun up, heart thundering, but no one was there inside. She locked every door, every window. She checked her recorder, still running. Played back the last 5 minutes of audio. Most of it was the fire crackling, her own breath, and then clear as day, a voice not her own. Evie. She dropped the recorder. The next morning brought fog and frost, a bitter blend that clung to the trees and swallowed the view beyond 20 feet. Evelyn stood at the cabin sink, sipping black coffee from a chipped enamel mug. Pistol tucked into her waistband. Last night had changed everything. Someone had whispered her name inside that cabin. She hadn't imagined it. The recorder didn't lie. She needed backup, a plan. Her burner phone buzzed. One barely. She texted, found a button, heard a voice, sent sheriff's notes again. Any updates on Dawn? Delivered no reply. Yet she hated relying on Marcos, her only real friend left from the old life, but he was an ex-cop and he owed her. Evelyn had stitched him up after a bar brawl back in Detroit. He'd never forgotten. She was pacing the living room when it happened. The knock, not the 3 measured taps from before. This was heavier. Confident she froze, finger tightened on the grip of the pistol. Another knock, louder than a voice. Miss Green, you in there? She didn't answer. Don Blandon, property owner, just checking in. We had some bears tear up trash bins on my upper trail. Wanted to warn you, don't keep anything edible outside. She edged to the window and peeked. There he was, same wiry frame, same brown flannel, same unsettling calm. She opened the door just a crack. I'm fine, thanks. Don smiled. It never reached his eyes. Didn't mean to spook you, just figured I'd drop by. You were asking about the old trails in your check-in message, right? Yeah, she said cautiously. Thought I might go for a hike later. Well, now be careful. Fog rolls in, folks get lost. He scratched his cheek. Had a couple up here about a year ago, never came back. He said it so casually. Evelyn nearly choked. I heard something about that, she said carefully. They ever get found? Don shook his head slowly. Shame, real sweet couple. Police thought they probably fell in a ravine. Lot of drop-offs out here. Nature's cruel when you're careless. Evelyn looked past him toward the tree. And did you know them? He met her gaze. Know them? Number just saw their picture in the papers. Handsome pair. Looked happy. Liar. He was staring at her too long now, calculating, curious, like he was peeling her layer by layer. Well, she said, I'll be sure not to wander. Don turned to leave, then paused on the porch. You know that perfume you wear? It's nice, real familiar. Evelyn's blood iced. She hadn't worn perfume in weeks, but she recognized the scent in the cabin. Harper's scent. Don smiled. Enjoy your stay, Rachel. And then he walked off into the fog. Inside, Evelyn locked every bolt, every window. Then she let her knees buckle to the floor and shook. Don knew. She wasn't sure how, but he knew later. She checked the pantry. Something noted at her. The shelves were too full, too organized. It wasn't just for guests. This place was lived in. And then she saw it, a small wooden crate tucked behind the canned peaches. Inside, old batteries, duct tape, rope, normal supplies, until she spotted a Polaroid face down. She turned it over. It was faded, water-stained, but Harper's face was unmistakable, eyes wide, terror blooming like a wound, and behind her, out of focus, the antler mask. The Polaroid sat on the table like a crime scene photo, blurry but damning. Evelyn stared at it under the glow of the cabin's old lamp, her breath shallow, chest tight. Harper's terror was unmistakable, and behind her the monster masked antler looming. This wasn't just murder, this was hunting. She opened her recorder, found photograph. Harper in frame, visible distress. Background unclear, but subject in hunter's mask appears behind her. Strong possibility Don was involved in ritualistic or fetishistic killing, recommending escalation to active criminal status, serial offender probable. The recorder clicked off with a cold beep. She packed the Polaroid in a Ziploc and stashed it in her duffel. Her hands were trembling, but not from fear, from clarity. This was no longer a search. This was a hunt. Evelyn spent the next hour pacing the cabin, searching for anything else that had been overlooked. That's when she saw the rug, a bear hide, too symmetrical, too well placed. She pulled it back. Beneath it, a square of wood slightly raised, a door in the floor. She dug her fingers into the groove and pried it open. A trapdoor, hinges creaked, wood groaned below. Blackness and a Rusted metal ladder descending into what looked like a shallow crawl space. Her heart thundered. She grabbed her flashlight gun and slid down the ladder, boots clanging on the rungs. The space smelled like mildew and rot and something else, decay. She crouched low, sweeping the beam across the dirt floor. The crawl space ran the length of the cabin, tight, maybe 3 feet high. Old duct work above her, crumbling insulation, but it was the far corner that froze her. A pile of objects half buried in the soil, clothing, a pair of women's boots, a necklace she recognized from an old Christmas photo of Harper, then a rib bone. Thin human. Evelyn crawled closer, gagging as the scent intensified. She used her gloved hand to brush away dirt from a crumpled shape, a jacket, denim torn, the name stitched into the collar, and faded thread. Halker. She fell backward, eyes stinging, bile rising. There was no denying it anymore. Harper had died here. Evelyn scrambled back up the ladder, burst into the fresh air of the cabin, and collapsed onto the wooden floor. She didn't cry. She couldn't. She was burning inside, rage, grief, adrenaline forming an alloy in her chest. She had proof now. Don hadn't just killed them, he'd kept souvenirs. She called Marcos again. 2 bars, a miracle, he answered on the 3rd ring. Evelyn, where the hell? Shut up and listen, she hissed. I found a trapdoor, crawl space, human remains, clothing, and a Polaroid with Harper and the killer. Jesus Christ. Did you call the local? No, she snapped. If I call the county sheriff? Don might have friends there. This town small, word travels. I need you to get someone outside to escalate. FBI, state police, anyone not local now. She heard keys clacking, Marco swearing under his breath. Okay, I'll find a contact. Don't move, don't engage him, just stay put and wait for the call. Dropped, signal gone. Evelyn looked at the bars. 0. The forest outside had gone still again. She stood in the middle of the room, suddenly aware of how loud her breath sounded, of how visible she must have looked through the cabin's many windows. She clicked off the lights, moved to the bedroom, closed the blinds, checked the pistol, and waited, because she knew something now. She was no longer the only one watching. The silence was unnatural. Not just quiet, but dead. Evelyn sat by the window, pistol across her lap. The trapdoor now covered again with a rug, like a secret trying to bury itself back into the floor outside. The fog clung to the treetops like skin peeled back. Too slow, her eyes scanned the woods, waiting for movement. A branch snap, a shape in the mist, nothing, but she could feel him out there. Don wasn't just a killer, he was a collector. She moved to the table and opened her laptop. Hotspot, 0 signal, but Marcos had sent PDFs earlier, cached on her desktop. One file titled Unsolved Couples, Montana and Surrounding Counties 2015 to 2023. She clicked. 6 couples, all tourists, all missing near small cabins or rural retreats, some in Glacier, others in the Flathead. 1 pair even closer to Yellowstone, all stayed in isolated rentals. Most had one thing in common: properties managed by shell companies. Her stomach dropped as she opened the file attached to the 6th case, a cabin near Whitefish listed under a management group called Stone Elk Rentals. She clicked the registry info. Registered address, Moss Hollow Trail Road, same as Dawn's. A chill passed through her spine. She returned to the crawl space that afternoon. She needed more proof. With gloves on and bandana over her mouth, she shifted dirt and bones piece by horrifying piece. A rotted wallet, ID half-legible, Stephen Miles, a name from the couple listed missing in 2020, photographed, bagged. Her breath fogged against the mask. The air was foul, something thick and almost sweet, and then she found it, a metal box sealed with duct tape buried beneath old fabric. She pried it open. Inside, zip-tied locks of hair, jewelry, 2 pairs of wedding rings, rusted, still interlocked, a Polaroid camera, several undeveloped rolls of film, and 1 black leather-bound journal. Evelyn didn't cry, not anymore. She just opened the journal. Inside, a list, names, dates, all handwritten: Harper and Ryan 2022, Miles and Jordan 2020, Silva and Taran 2019. 12 couples, 1 per year, going back over a decade. At the bottom, scrolled in fresh ink, green 2023. Her alias, her booking. He knew. She rushed back up the ladder, through the rug, over the trapdoor, and sat against the wall, breathing hard. Then the unmistakable crunch of boots outside. Dawn. He wasn't knocking this time, just pacing the porch, back and forth, waiting. She crept to the window. Through the glass she saw him standing there, staring out at the woods, just standing, hands in his pockets. That same calm posture. Then he spoke, not loudly, just to the air. Some people don't know when they're not welcome. A pause. I gave you a chance to leave. Evelyn kept her breath, shallow, pistol raised. She aimed it at the door, finger light on the trigger. He walked off the porch, but not far. She could see him through the trees. Standing beside a large pine, he turned, looked directly at the window, and smiled. Night fell fast. She didn't sleep. She sat in the dark, watching. She thought about calling again, but the phone was useless. She texted Marcos anyway. He knows Don Blandon is the killer. Crawl space full of trophies, found a ledger, bodies, undelivered figures. Somewhere around 2 a.m. she heard something thud on the roof, then a scratch, slow, rhythmic, like claws on metal. She didn't move, didn't Blink just waited. The scratching stopped. In the distance a wolf howled closer. Something laughed, not loud, not joyful, just soft and wet and very human. Morning came like a bruise, dark, dull, and aching. The sunlight that crept into the cabin was gray and anemic, filtered through clouds that hung heavy with silence. Evelyn hadn't slept. She couldn't. She sat at the table, the journal of names opened. Before her, Harper's was third from the bottom, a silent signature of death. 12 couples, 12 bodies or more hidden somewhere beyond the reach of cell towers and common decency. She needed to find the rest. Dawn's truck was gone. She waited 2 hours before moving, watching from behind curtains, pistol tucked tight into her waistband, a hunting knife strapped to her thigh. At 11:08 a.m. she stepped into the backyard. The woods yawned behind the cabin like a secret. Evelyn moved fast and quiet. She followed the slight indentation of worn earth, no real trail, just a pattern where feet had passed often and leaves didn't grow back right. The journal clutched in her backpack. She passed a broken fence, a moss-covered stump, a rusted wheelbarrow with dried mud crusted in its belly. Then the smell. She froze. Earth, copper, mildew, and rot, thick, sweet, sick. She turned the corner behind a thicket of thorn bush, heart hammering in her chest, and found the clearing. There were 8 mounds, each the size of a body, neat, domed, covered in small stones and leaves, some with sticks arranged like crude crosses, each marked with a number etched into a weathered wooden plank. Not names, just numbers. She moved toward one marked number 3 and knelt beside it. Something white jutted from the edge, bone clean, smooth, the curve of a jaw. Her vision blurred, but she didn't cry, not now. She snapped photos with her burner hands, trembling proof. Then she noticed the far end of the clearing, a shovel freshly used, and beside it a half-dug grave. Within the loosened soil something shimmered metal. She reached in, fingers closing around it, a wristwatch smeared in dirt but still ticking, inscribed on the back, to Ryan forever. Her lungs collapsed. Harper had been here. They were both here. Then a twig snapped behind her. She turned, gun raised, and found herself staring at Don, calm, arms folded, covered in dirt. He smiled. You should have left Rachel. Evelyn fired. The shot went wide. Adrenaline and grief made her hand twitch. Don moved like a wolf, fast, lean, direct. He tackled her, knocking the gun from her grip. They hit the dirt hard. She kicked, screamed, clawed at his eyes. His forearm pressed against her throat, grinding bone against bone. You shouldn't have come back, he growled, spit flying. Her hand found the hunting knife at her hip. She drove it into his side. He screamed, high, sharp, not mortal but real. She shoved him off and scrambled for the pistol. Don stumbled, bleeding but still standing, still smiling. Next time, he hissed and staggered into the woods, one hand clutching his side. She didn't chase. She couldn't. She collapsed beside Harper's grave, sobbing, the pistol in her lap. Not out of fear, out of fury. He had her sister's watch. He had a grave half dug, and he had a list with her name on it. The pain came first, a white hot bolt across Evelyn's scalp, then darkness. She woke with her cheek against concrete, wrists zip-tied behind her back, the air damp and crawling with mildew. It took her a full minute to realize she was underground, the cellar, the one she hadn't found, the one he'd built for people like her. Her legs were numb, her tongue dry and coppery. She blinked against the flickering light of a single hanging bulb. Stone walls, no windows, one door, one voice. Didn't want it to go this way. Dawn. She turned her head slow and stiff and saw him sitting on a stool in the corner, his side patched with gauze, blood-streaked and lazily dressed. He held a thermos in one hand, her pistol on the table beside him. I didn't even know who you were until yesterday, he said calmly. You really shouldn't drink the same perfume as your sister. She spat at the floor. Why? He sighed, took a long sip. That's what they always ask, but it's never just one reason. People are complicated evils, not a lightning bolt. It's a drip, year after year, until it soaks you. He stood, walked slowly toward her, crouched. You think you're the first to come snooping. You're not. The others were just easier to turn around, but not you. You came in loaded, ready to fight. That made you interesting. You killed 12 people, she hissed. He chuckled. You think I stopped at 12? Her stomach dropped. Dawn stood again, pacing now. They always looked so perfect, these couples, so happy, so smug. Flashy rings, honeymoon smiles, like nothing could touch them, like they weren't just meat walking around with delusions. He stopped at a small cabinet, opened it slowly, pulled out a mask. The mask carved antlers, painted bone white, eyes black as tar. I tried bearing the urges, he said, tried therapy, church, even abstinence, but in the end there's only one truth. He leaned close. We are what we do when no one's watching. Evelyn shifted her weight. Her hands, still bound, were behind her back, pressing against something cold and sharp in her jeans pocket, a zipper on her knife sheath. She began working it open slowly, deliberately. Keep him talking. Why, Harper? He paused. Something flickered behind his eyes. She was different, he said. She fought hard, bit my ear, broke a tooth, most of them cry. Not her, she screamed. Yeah, but not for herself, for him. He laughed again. Hollow. She made me kill him first. That wasn't the plan, but I like to improvise. Evelyn's mouth filled with bile. You did wrong things with her, she said. He went still, then calmly placed the mask back on the shelf. No, he said, my brother did. He helped me for years, but he liked it messy. I liked it clean. He made things. Wrists zip-tied behind her back, the air damp and crawling with mildew. It took her a full minute to realize she was underground, the cellar, the one she hadn't found, the One he'd built for people like her. Her legs were numb, her tongue dry and coppery. She blinked against the flickering light of a single hanging bulb. Stone walls, no windows, one door, one voice. Didn't want it to go this way, Dawn. She turned her head slow and stiff and saw him sitting on a stool in the corner, his side patched with gauze, blood-streaked and lazily dressed. He held a thermos in one hand, her pistol on the table beside him. I didn't even know who you were until yesterday, he said calmly. You really shouldn't drink the same perfume as your sister. She spat at the floor. Why? He sighed, took a long sip. That's what they always ask, but it's never just one reason. People are complicated. Evil's not a lightning bolt, it's a drip year after year until it soaks you. He stood, walked slowly toward her, crouched. You think you're the first to come snooping. You're not. The others were just easier to turn around, but not you. You came in loaded, ready to fight. That made you interesting. You killed 12 people, she hissed. He chuckled. You think I stopped at 12? Her stomach dropped. Dawn stood again, pacing now. They always looked so perfect, these couples, so happy, so smug. Flashy rings, honeymoon smiles, like nothing could touch them, like they weren't just meat walking around with delusions. He stopped at a small cabinet, opened it slowly, pulled out a mask. The mask carved antlers, painted bone, white eyes black as tar. I tried bearing the urges, he said, tried therapy, church, even abstinence, but in the end there's only one truth. He leaned close. We are what we do when no one's watching. Evelyn shifted her weight, her hands still bound were behind her back, pressing against something cold and sharp in her jeans pocket, a zipper on her knife sheath. She began working it open slowly, deliberately. Keep him talking. Why, Harper? He paused. Something flickered behind his eyes. She was different, he said. She fought hard, bit my ear, broke a tooth, most of them cry. Not her, she screamed. Yeah, but not for herself, for him. He laughed again. Hollow. She made me kill him first. That wasn't the plan, but I like to improvise. Evelyn's mouth filled with bile. You did wrong things with her, she said. He went still, then calmly placed the mask back on the shelf. No, he said, my brother did. He helped me for years, but he liked it messy. I liked it clean. He made things dirty. Brother, that was new. He's still around. Dead car crash in Utah. Deserved worse. He moved back to the table, poured something clear into a glass. Vodka. Evelyn smelled it. You'll end up with them, he said, gesturing upward. Nice spot in the dirt. I was going to give you a clean exit, but now I think you'll scream. Just like she did. The zipper opened, her fingers found the blade handle still taped inside the jeans. Emergency only. He stood, picked up her pistol. You loaded it with hollow points, he said with admiration. That's overkill, but I respect it. She palmed the knife and waited. Dawn knelt beside her. Any last words? Rachel Green, who isn't she? Smiled. Yeah, and drove the blade into his thigh. He screamed, stumbling backward. She rolled, still bound, slamming her shoulder into the table leg. The pistol fell. She kicked it across the room away from him. Got him, you, he shouted, lunging. She twisted onto her knees, grabbed the broken stool leg near the wall and swung upward with all her strength. It cracked across his jaw. He fell, but he wasn't out. He groaned, reaching for the blade still in his leg. Evelyn scrambled across the cellar, teeth clenched, shoulder burning, searching. Her eyes found a tool bench hammer. She grabbed it, turned and swung it into Dawn's face once, twice, 3 times. Then silence, then stillness. She knelt over his body, sobbing, heaving, the hammer falling from her hands. Then footsteps above. She froze. Not police, not help. Someone else. The footsteps above stopped. A long pause, then a creak. The door to the cellar shifted slightly. A shadow cut across the top of the stairs. Evelyn stood frozen, back pressed against the cool stone wall, blood drying on her face. Hammer in her hand. Dawn lay still on the floor, jaw shattered, twitching only once. A post-mortem reflex. She gripped the hammer tighter. The cellar door opened. Fully a man stood at the top, middle-aged, darker skin, neatly dressed, no weapon in hand, but his posture was wrong. Military, straight, cold eyes, a suitcase behind him. He stepped down slowly. Who are you? Evelyn rasped. The man said nothing at first, then, name's Ray Delane. I drive for Dawn, clean up after things. Sometimes keep watch. Her stomach dropped. The brother, the accomplice. I thought Dawn said you were dead. Ree smiled faintly. People say a lot of things right before they die. He stepped to Dawn's body, nudged it with his boot. Jesus, he said. You really cracked him. Don't worry, Evelyn said, voice ragged. You're next. Ray chuckled. You're a lot of things, lady, but you're not a killer. She stepped forward. Hammer raised. Ree didn't move. Dawn kept souvenirs, under the cabin. Behind the drywall, jewelry, teeth, fingernails, even. He called it the archive, like it was art. Evelyn froze. Where hidden panel, crawl space, southeast corner. He used to keep a spare mask back there too, and a burner phone. Ray looked her over, eyes narrowing. You're not just grieving, you're angry. That's different. It's dangerous. She inched backward toward the stairs. Why help him? You knew he killed people. Ray shrugged. Dawn saved me. I had debts, a criminal record, nothing to lose. He gave me a job, a purpose. We're all monsters under the right pressure. Evelyn's eyes darted toward the stairwell. Go on, Ree said, run or kill me. Either way, this ends in flames. She threw the hammer. He ducked, but it Grazed his forehead. She ran the stairs, felt endless, her lungs burned blood. Throbbed in her ears. She hit the top, slammed the door shut, jammed a chair. Beneath the knob something crashed below. Ray following. She had seconds. She grabbed her duffel, the journal, Harper's watch, Don's camera, and bolted out the front door into the bright blinding sunlight. Her truck sat waiting, keys already in her coat pocket. As she reached it, she heard the cellar door shatter behind her. Run, __, Ray's voice roared from the cabin. She dove into the truck, started the engine. He was already at the porch. She threw it into drive and gunned it down the trail. The trees blurred past her, heart jackhammered against her ribs. She didn't stop, not when the tires skidded on gravel, not when the forest tried to swallow her. Only when she saw the radio tower, a ranger station. She skidded into the dirt lot and stumbled from the truck, waving her arms like a mad woman. A ranger stepped out, hand on his belt. "Ma'am, are you call the FBI? Call everyone," she gasped. "There are bodies in Moss Hollow. Don Blandon is dead. Another man's trying to kill me. I have proof." He saw the blood, the filth, the journal clutched in her hands. He nodded slowly, then rushed back inside. 3 hours later, Evelyn sat in an interview room at the Homestead County Sheriff's Office, hands wrapped in gauze, lips cracked, eyes hollow. Across from her, Detective Sawyer pressed record. "Miss Cross," he said, "you understand you are." Agreed, and behind his smile she saw the spark of ambition. Maybe it didn't matter, let him want fame. She wanted names, ashes, justice. But what no one saw, not in the footage, not in the files, was the letter she found tucked deep in the crawlspace wall. Not in Don's handwriting, different, cruder, rougher. It read, "She wasn't supposed to be yours. She was mine first. I watched her, I waited. You stole her. I should have killed you too. Next time I will." Signed, Artie Ray Delane. She hadn't shown it to the cops, not yet. It meant something deeper, something worse. This wasn't just Don's sickness, it was shared, a blood pact. And Ray, he was still out there watching. It started with a photograph, a man seated alone at a roadside diner in Idaho, hoodie pulled low, eyes downcast, caught on a customer's phone camera during a live stream, uploaded, shared, forgotten until the algorithm noticed his face. Ray Delane. It was blurry, but the time stamp and GPS didn't lie. A second sighting came a week later, Missoula, Montana, a pawn shop. He sold a watch, Ryan's watch, without giving a name. The clerk remembered the eyes. The FBI moved, but by the time they arrived he was gone again, like a ghost with steel bones. Evelyn knew what that meant. He was close. She didn't tell the FBI what she planned, didn't tell Marcos, didn't tell anyone. Some hunts weren't meant to be shared. She packed her bag, knife, gun, burner, phone, Don's Polaroids, the journal, and one last thing, Harper's necklace, not for protection, for memory. She drove north, staying off highways, keeping to back roads and motel where no one asked for ID. She knew his pattern now. Ray wasn't running, he was circling. Predators didn't flee, they stalked. He was watching her press interviews, listening to her podcast appearances, reading between the lines. She gave him a breadcrumb trail, casually mentioned she might return to Moss Hollow one day. She waited. It took 3 nights. The knock came at 3:14 a.m. Evelyn was already awake. She didn't speak, she didn't breathe. She simply rose from the mattress, gun in hand, and turned off the light. The knock came again, software deliberate, a scrape against the wood, and then opened the door. Evie. Her blood went still, not because of fear, because he knew her name, the real one. She opened the door fast, gun raised. No one, porch empty. She stepped out slowly, checking corners, then a whisper near her ear, "Wrong move." He was behind her. They crashed to the porch, her gun skidding across the planks. He was strong but older now, slower. She drove her elbow into his ribs, headbutt his nose, blood sprayed. He snarled, grabbed her hair, slammed her back into the railing. Lights flashed behind her eyes. Then she reached down, pulled the knife from her boot, and buried it into his side. Ray screamed, tried to twist away, but she climbed on top of him, face inches from his, and whispered, "She died in your arms, didn't she?" His eyes widened. "You touched her," he growled, blood pooling at his lips. "Say it," he spat. "She begged for you, not him." "You." She screamed, "Your name when?" Evelyn plunged the blade deeper, twisting. "Not anymore." He convulsed, then stilled. She staggered to her feet, body shaking, covered in sweat and blood. Her breathing came in short gasps. Her chest felt like it might cave in. Then blue light sirens. She dropped the knife and raised her hands as 2 sheriff's deputies stormed the porch. "Drop the weapon, hands up." She nodded, dazed, blood streaking her arms. "He was waiting. I told you he'd come." They looked down at Ray's body, saw his face, froze. One officer radioed it in, "Suspect down, confirmed identity Ray Delane, Evelyn Cross alive." Repeat, alive. 6 hours later, Evelyn sat in another interview room, cleaned, bandaged. A younger detective looked at her, voice quiet, "Miss Cross, you want to press charges?" She stared at him. "I want him cremated, scattered in the landfill." The detective swallowed. "We'll see what we can do." Outside, Marcos waited, leaning against a cruiser, arms crossed. "You good?" he asked. She looked at the sunrise over the trees. "No," she said, "but I'm done running." He nodded. "That's enough." In her motel room later that night, Evelyn opened the box she Hadn't touched in months. Inside Harper's necklace, Ryan's wedding ring, a thumb drive containing every journal entry, the last photo of the Walkers smiling before their honeymoon. She placed them all on the bed, a shrine of sorts. Then she picked up the burner phone and called Daniel Whitmore. "We finished the doc. We tell it all. No edits. You sure?" he asked. "I'm ready," she said. "Let's bury this for good." It took 6 weeks. The documentary launched under the title Moss Hollow, The Cabin That Killed. 10 episodes, millions of views in the first 2 days. It wasn't just about the murders, it was about why no one looked closer, why no one listened to the women who vanished, why small-town monsters wore smiles and skinned deer while burying bodies. Evelyn sat on the press tour couch with the same necklace Harper wore in the photo that went viral, the one snapped just before she vanished. Across from her, hosts cried, audiences clapped, survivors messaged her by the thousands. She became a symbol, but not of heroism, of survival, of vengeance. A month after the final episode aired, Detective Sawyer called coroner's office finished with the property remains. He said, "County's handing the land back. Want to know what they'll do with the cabin?" Evelyn answered without hesitation, "Burn it." And so they did. Firefighters stood on the perimeter with hoses in hand, but none were needed. The cabin went up like it was eager to disappear. Dry pine, old paint, varnished floors soaked in a decade of bleach and blood. Evelyn watched it all burn. The porch collapsed first, then the roof, then the trapdoor caved inward and the flames roared. Smoke rose into the sky like a final breath. The woods fell silent. The graves behind the property had been emptied weeks ago, their contents re-ride in cemeteries chosen by families across the country. Only ashes would remain here. Now ashes and memory. That night she returned alone. The fire had burned low, only embers and ruin left behind, charred bones of the monster's house. She stepped through the still warm dirt and laid a single photo in the center, Harper and Ryan on their wedding day, laughing. Then she poured a little whiskey on the ground. "For you," she said, "and for all the ones who never got found." She lit a match, dropped it, the photo curled in on itself and vanished into the dark. Evelyn didn't go back to nursing, didn't stay on camera. She disappeared like the one she once hunted for, this time by choice. But every year on the anniversary of the cabin fire, someone would leave a single Polaroid on the steps of the Butte police station, a photo of the woods behind Moss Hollow, black and white, no note, no name, just silence and peace.